The blackouts hit like voids carved from my own mind, each scooping out another piece of me. It started subtly, in the heat of the kitchen at Tan and Mirror, our upscale bistro tucked into the fog-shrouded alleys of San Francisco's North Beach. I'd be torching a creme brulee, the blowtorch hissing like a serpent's breath, the sugar bubbling and caramelizing into a perfect amber crust that cracked under the flame like fragile ice over a bottomless lake. The scent of burnt sweetness filled the air, mingling with the tang of garlic and herbs from the night's specials. Then, suddenly, nothing. A spiral of emptiness twisted inward like the nightmarish drawings from a forgotten art book in my Paris student days, where bodies folded into impossible shapes and limbs contorted into self-devouring voids. Time evaporated, leaving me disoriented, torch still in hand, the dessert scorched to ruin, or mysteriously perfected in ways I couldn't recall. When awareness clawed its way back, Micah was always there, his hand steady and warm on my shoulder, his smile a brighter, fuller mirror of mine, as if he'd feasted on the missing time. His eyes, identical to my own hazel, sparked with unnatural vigor, reflecting the overhead lights like polished obsidian. "Rough night, Andrew," he'd say, his smooth baritone matching my timbre, but laced with mocking undertones that prickled my skin. Yet I felt the drain, the subtle theft of my essence seeping into him through our invisible tether, a bond forged in the womb. Or so I'd always believed. We were twins, after all, born minutes apart, our lives intertwined like vines choking the same trellis. Lately, though, it felt less like brotherhood and more like parasitism, his presence siphoning the marrow from my bones. Memories vanish first in faint hints, then in sharp cries. It began with small things, the precise angle of a knife slice, the rhythm of chopping onions honed over years. Soon, entire swaths of my past dissolved. The exhilaration of my Paris apprenticeship, mastering the art of deboning a quail with surgical grace under Chef Laurent's stern gaze, his kitchen a symphony of clattering pans and shouted orders. Gone, leaving a hollow ache like a phantom limb where pride once resided. During service, I'd reach for that knowledge, only to find my hands fumbling, the quail's delicate bones cracking under clumsy pressure, drawing frustrated glares from the line cooks. Childhood joys evaporated next. The sticky sweet tang of stolen candies from Mom's pantry in our cramped Oakland apartment. The thrill of hiding under the table with Micah, our laughter muffled as we savored the forbidden treats. Those anchors of warmth erased, replaced by a gnawing emptiness that made my skin crawl, as if invisible insects burrowed beneath it, feasting on the remnants. Even the raw sting of lost loves, those tender wounds that had shaped my palate for bitterness, was leached away. I thought of Isabella, the sommelier who'd broken my heart in a rain-soaked cafe in Montmartre, her words sharp as a paring knife. "You're too consumed by your kitchen, Andrew. There's no room for me." The pain had fueled my creations, infusing dishes with layers of complexity, sweet and sour, joy and regret. Now it was gone, leaving me adrift, unable to recall why certain flavors evoked such melancholy. I became a husk, shuffling through the kitchen like a marionette with frayed strings, my once precise movements jerky and uncertain. The staff muttered behind my back, their eyes darting away when I entered, the air thick with the unspoken fear that Chef Tan was losing his edge. Meanwhile, Micah bloomed. His presence filled the restaurant, his charm a siren's call, drawing patrons who raved about the new energy in the air. He'd arrived unannounced 6 months ago, claiming a fresh start after vague troubles back east, and taken over front-of-house duties. Customers adored him, his easy laugh, his flawless wine-pairing recommendations that I'd taught him years ago. But in the polished steel of the walk-in fridge, its cold air biting my skin as I retrieved ingredients, I'd catch glimpses, my reflection gaunt, eyes sunken like bruises from sleepless nights, cheekbones sharp as cleavers. His glowed with pilfered vitality, mouth curling in a smirk, not quite human, as if the mask slipped to reveal writhing tendrils beneath, shadowy forms flickering in the corner of my vision. The restaurant surged under his influence, reservations booked weeks in advance, critics praising the vibrant fusion of flavors from my stolen inspirations. Yet I faded, a ghost in my own domain. He was devouring me whole, not with teeth, but with insidious hunger, erasing Andrew Tan to make room for the monstrosity he'd always been, the parasite, fattening itself on my soul's marrow, poised to slither into my life and claim it as his own. I'd lie awake in my loft above the restaurant, city fog pressing against the windows like a living shroud, replaying our shared history. We'd been inseparable as children, finishing each other's sentences, sharing dreams that bled into one another. But there were anomalies. Nights when I'd wake screaming from nightmares of being consumed, only to find Micah watching with that knowing smile. Doctors dismissed it as twin telepathy, but now I wondered if it was something darker, a primordial link where one fed on the other. Panic twisted in my gut like over-kneaded dough, heavy and unyielding. But I clung to what I knew, the kitchen, where creation was power. Our bond was culinary and intimate, shared bites binding us like conjoined flesh, a ritual from our youth where we'd taste each other's experiments, forging an unbreakable connection. If food had created this tether, perhaps it could sever it. So I weaponized it, forging memory traps from ingredients that evoked and ensnared. Each dish a meticulously crafted snare to reclaim what was mine. The first was a terrine of foie gras, veined with wormwood's bitter poison, its absinthe-like essence meant to unearth his hidden appetites and force a reversal. I prepared it in secret after the last patrons departed, the restaurant now a dimly lit crypt with shadows pooling in the corners like spilled wine. The air hung heavy with remnants of the evening service, garlic, seared meat, and the faint metallic tang of fear sweat. Micah joined me at the chef's table, a small alcove shrouded by velvet curtains, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Another late night tasting, brother?" he asked, settling into the chair opposite me, his posture perfectly mimicking my own. We dined in eerie synchronicity, forks rising and falling in unison, the terrine smooth and unctuous on the tongue, its richness cut by the wormwood's herbal bite that lingered like a murmured curse. As he bit in, I felt the inversion, a rush of stolen fragments flooding back, hot and vivid as fresh blood. Visions erupted, womb-like darkness, our forms entwined in the amniotic sac, but not as equals. He was a pulsating mass fusing to mine, feeding on embryonic screams that resounded through the fluid void. I saw it clearly now. Micah, or whatever he truly was, latching on to me before birth. A shadow twin born of some cosmic aberration. Not flesh, but an entity that mimicked it. The terrene amplified the memory, pulling it from him like threads from a tapestry. He writhed internally, his facade cracking as sweat beaded on his brow, his smile faltering into a grimace. I reclaimed a sliver of my joy, the Paris apprenticeship rushing back in a torrent of sensory overload, the sizzle of butter in cast-iron pans, Laurent's gravelly voice barking corrections, the triumph of my first perfect quail. But he fought back, his mental tendrils lashing out in blackouts that painted our shared psyche with grotesque tableau kitchens of bleeding walls where crimson rivulets dripped from cracked tiles, ovens birthing malformed delicacies that screamed with my voice, their doughy forms twisting into parodies of human shapes, eyes pleading for release. The battle left us both drained, the table between us a war zone of half-eaten plates and spilled wine. Micah excused himself early, claiming a headache, but I saw the flicker of unease in his eyes, the first crack in his armored charm. Emboldened, I escalated, delving into forbidden ingredients and alchemical combinations. The next trap was a saffron risotto, laced with hallucinogenic spores from wild mushrooms I'd foraged in the misty redwood forests north of the city. The preparation was ritualistic. I simmered the arboreal rice in a broth infused with saffron threads that stained the liquid gold, their exotic aroma filling the kitchen like incense in a forgotten temple. The spores, ground into a fine powder, added an earthy undernote, promising visions that would force him to confront his true shape, an amorphous horror spiraling inward, clinging to my essence like a leech in perpetual hunger. We shared it under the cover of a stormy night, rain lashing the windows like accusing fingers, thunder rumbling like an ancient beast's growl. As the risotto melted on our tongues, creamy, with bursts of saffron's floral bitterness amplified by the spores, our minds merged in feverish duels. Flavors twisted into torments, rice grains writhing like maggots in my mouth, each a fragment of reclaimed memory. I tasted the return of childhood joys, sharp, visceral, like biting into living flesh, stolen candies exploding with sweetness that burned my throat. Micah convulsed subtly, his fork clattering to the plate, his reflection in the silverware distorting into something inhuman, eyes multiplying in endless fractals of hunger staring back at me. In the shared hallucination, I chased him through a labyrinth of our conjoined psyche, corridors lined with pulsating membranes throbbing with stolen heartbeats. He lashed out with visions of his own, me as the parasite, feeding on his vitality, our roles inverted in a dizzying spiral. But I pressed on, devouring more of him, feeling my strength return in waves. Yet he adapted, his feedings growing slyer, more insidious. Blackout struck unpredictably mid-service, leaving me disoriented amid half-prepped ingredients, hands trembling as if puppeteered by invisible strings. I'd come to, surrounded by concerned staff, my mise en place in disarray. Dishes I'd apparently created but couldn't remember conceiving, their flavors alien yet brilliant, as if Micah had murmured recipes through our link. Doubt crept in like mold on forgotten bread. Was I the chef or the ingredient? Paranoia gnawed at me during quiet hours. As I paced the empty kitchen, fluorescent lights buzzing like swarms of insects, I'd stare at old photos of us, Micah and me, arms around each other at culinary school graduations, our smiles identical. But now, in the dim light, his seemed predatory, teeth too sharp, eyes like voids that pulled at my soul. Customers began requesting Micah's specials, dishes he'd improvised during my absences, their praise twisting like a knife in my gut. The restaurant, once my sanctuary, felt like a cage, its walls closing in with every stolen breath. I pushed further, crafting increasingly elaborate traps. I simmered a soup of bone marrow and nightshade berries for hours until the broth thickened into a viscous elixir evoking the primal fears of our shared infancy. We consumed it in silence, steam rising like ghosts from the bowls, carrying scents of earth and decay. The battle raged in our minds. I reclaimed the sting of lost loves, Isabella's face materializing in the swirling broth, her laughter turning to screams as Micah's form revealed itself, a coiling mass of shadows, tendrils extending to ensnare me. He countered, with blackouts that plunged me into abyssal depths, where I floated in amniotic fluid, his voice murmuring that I was the invader, the one who had always fed on him. Each meal left scars, physical twitches, migraines pounding like hammers on anvils, and a growing sense that our essences were blurring, merging into something neither human nor whole. But the toll mounted. My hands, once steady as a surgeon's, now trembled while wielding a knife, the blade nicking my skin more frequently, blood mingling with ingredients like unintended seasonings. Micah's charm deepened, patrons lingering longer, their laughter resounding through the dining room as if he were the true heart of Tan and Mirror. I caught him in the mirror once, practicing my mannerisms, my slight head tilt when tasting a sauce, my precise way of folding a napkin. His mimicry, flawless, chilling. Doubt festered. Perhaps I was mad. The blackouts were epilepsy. Micah an innocent brother. But the visions persisted, too vivid to deny, pulling me toward the inevitable climax. Tonight, as shadows lengthen in Tan and Mirror, the restaurant empty save for the hum of refrigerators and the distant wail of foghorns from the bay, I've prepared the ultimate trap, a grotesque heart of reclaimed fragments, fashioned from veal sweetbreads, black truffles, and a reduction of our shared blood. It throbs on the plate like a living organ, its surface glistening under the low lights, truffle veins marbling the pale flesh exuding an aroma that blends richness with rot, promise with peril. We sit across from each other at the chef's table, forks poised, the air thick with unspoken malice, charged like the moments before a storm breaks. Micah's eyes meet mine, his smile a predator's grin. But I see the wariness there, the first hint of fear. The bite exploded on my tongue like a ruptured organ, the sweetbreads yielding with a visceral squelch and flooding my mouth with the mingled essence of truffle decay and our shared blood, hot, metallic, alive with the screams of reclaimed fragments. In that instant, our psyches slammed together, no longer dueling, but fusing into a grotesque unity, a Barker-esque tapestry of flesh where boundaries dissolved like melting fat in a searing pan. The kitchen warped around us, walls bulging with pulsating veins that throbbed to the rhythm of a single, frenzied heartbeat. Knives hanging from the ceiling like stalactites of bone, dripping the ichor of forgotten memories. Micah's form peeled away from mine in the shared void, revealing the horror beneath. Not a brother, but a writhing mass of tendrils spiraling inward like one of Ito's infinite coils. Eyes multiplying in fractal voids that reflected my own face back at me, distorted and devoured. I lunged at him in the mental maelstrom, devouring him as he devoured me, sinking my teeth into the core of his stolen self, each swallow reclaiming the Paris lights, the sugary rush of childhood candies, Isabella's parting kiss that tasted of rain and regret. Flavors twisted into torments, joy burned like acid, pain bloomed as exquisite rot, his parasitic hunger inverting into my feast. He fought, tendrils lashing out to wrap my essence, murmuring inversions. You were always the leech, Andrew, feeding on my shadow to shine. But I pressed on, chewing through layers of illusion, the womb darkness shattering like that first cracked creme brulee. The accident's visions replayed in reverse, the knife slip, not a spasm, but his desperate pull, the blood on the board, a map of our fusion, now a stain I erased by consuming him whole. He screamed, a soundless wail, resounding through our merged consciousness, as his form unraveled into wisps of shadow that I inhaled like steam from a simmering pot, filling the hollow craters inside me until I was whole again, bloated with the weight of what I'd reclaimed. Blackout lifted like fog burning off the bay, leaving me alone at the chef's table, the plate empty, save for a smear of sauce. The restaurant silent, except for my ragged breaths. Micah was gone, absorbed back into me, his presence silenced forever. I staggered to the mirror behind the bar, the same one where I'd first glimpsed his smirking reflection mocking my gauntness. Now, it showed only me, Andrew Tan, maestro restored, eyes bright with hard-won vitality, the cracks in my souffle sealed. But as I smiled, testing the fit of my reclaimed self, a bitter aftertaste lingered on my tongue, an unnatural hunger stirring in my depths, suggesting that in devouring him, I'd become something more, something less human. The reflection's grin widened just a fraction too sharp, and I wondered if the parasite had truly died, or merely changed hosts. Tan and mirror would thrive under my sole command, but every plate I crafted now carried that tainted trace, a symphony of flavors forever laced with the devourer's grin. Years passed in a blur of acclaim and excess, my restaurant ascending to mythic status, each dish a masterpiece infused with that secret spice, the essence of mica distilled into every bite. Patrons raved about the depth and unexpected layers that left them changed, hollowed out, yet craving more, their eyes glazing with a familiar hunger as they stumbled into the night. I told myself it was victory, that I'd won back my life. But late at night, alone in the kitchen, I'd catch glimpses in the polished steel, my reflection flickering, not quite syncing with my movements. A shadow self smirking back with teeth too many, too sharp. One evening, as I plated the final course for a solitary diner, a young chef with eyes like mine once were, brimming with ambition and hidden voids, I felt it stir anew. The hunger had evolved, seeking fresh hosts through the food I created. As he took his first bite, savoring the forbidden flavors, I watched his face contort in ecstasy and terror, our gazes locking in the mirror across the room. The reflection smiled widest then. Not mine, not Micah's, but ours, a new fusion beginning.